And I'm live. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning to you. We're a little early, 11:56. Get your tea, get your coffee, get your snack, get your notes, get your pen, or I should say your notepad, your pen. We're early, but we're live. So I'm just sitting here waiting. I am thoroughly prepared. Let's see who we got. We got a lot of people jumping on here. Hey, and since we're early, let me know where you're coming from. Where are you? Where are you? Let's go. Let's go. We got Plano, Texas on here. My man Michael Moore is in the house out there in North Carolina. We got San Antonio here. So it's a little early out there, but nah, it's not too early. It's not too early. Come on in. Aldine, Texas. We got a lot of Texas. Saskatchewan back in the house up there in Canada. I had to learn how to pronounce that one. You know, that was a tongue twister. Now I got it. Saskatchewan and Saskatoon, right? Where you from? Where you from? Come on in. We got Newport News in the house. Brooklyn is in the house. We got my Aunt Kathy Matthews Baggett in the house. Right here in Jersey City, New Jersey. She said, don't be shouting out my name. Yeah, man. We got Phoenix up in here. We got everybody. And those of you in Phoenix, you better let me get my mask here. Phoenix, this for Phoenix. Now I don't normally wear the N95. That's the powerful one. I wear the, little dollar thing, but I got it sitting there. You never know. Come on in, folks. It's not time yet. Just hit that share button, hit that retweet button. I even got YouTube on here today. I had to up my game. I'm Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I take this virtual assistant principal leadership academy seriously. So it's still not time. So those of you that jumped in here early, let me tell you something. I start writing each week's lesson, session, plan. I start writing it on Monday, right? So by the time I get to Saturday, I've reviewed this thing, tweaked it, revised it, edited it, did all that throughout the week that I'm ready. The problem, as you know, many of you, I put too much down. I'm just overzealous with this. This is, if I may say so myself, this is just important information. So I get overzealous and I write these long, like look at today. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I know it's, I don't know if I'm gonna get to all this. I'm sure going to, but I tell you what, I'm gonna get to everything I said I was gonna get to last week. So look here, y'all. It's 11 o'clock. Oh, and I even got this like side handwritten stuff, right? So I take this seriously. And let me say this before I formally jump on here. That's how all of us, not just you, but all of us, that's how we have to approach our work. See, it's like, those of you that love Kobe, I'm a Kobe guy. And I love Kobe, not, I love what he did on the basketball court, but that wasn't where it all came from in terms of my admiration. My admiration was his beast mode off the court. So what he was doing off the court to prepare for the court, this man lived in the gym. They call them gym rats. So I used to play ball, but I'm not that guy anymore. But I try to be a gym rat with my preparation. So here it is. And then, I do the paid work off all week. But here it is, the Saturday morning. This is not paid work. This is just volunteer, reaching people that I may never meet in life. But I want to be so thorough. So therefore, all week I'm getting ready for this. So now we're here. It's 11 o'clock. Let's jump in. So look. Good morning, everybody. See, we formal now, right? I was talking low. I was being cool. Good morning, everybody. I don't know about you, but I'm on fire. I'm ready. So I'm saying to you, listen, hit that share button. Hit that retweet button. I don't know how the YouTube side works yet. I'll figure that out after I look at the tape, but we on YouTube live too. So Twitter live, Facebook live, YouTube live. Hit that share button, hit that retweet button. Let them know Principal Kafele is blazing on June 27, last Saturday of the month. Just did a keynote with the Innovative Schools Summit, then did a wardrobe change. And now I got on my Negro League jersey, the Atlanta Black Crackers. Yeah, you never heard of them. The Atlanta Black Crackers. There was a mainstream white team, because, you know, they were segregated, called the Atlanta Crackers. I think it was a minor league team. So they couldn't get into the league because they were black. So they said, okay, we form our own team, the Atlanta Black Crackers, right? So this is their jersey. I tell you guys, for the past 9 weeks, this is the halfway point now. Week number 9, I wear these with pride, man. Right? Some of the best baseball players ever couldn't get into the majors until after Jackie Robinson in 1947. So they played in the Negro Leagues. And this was one of the teams, the Atlanta Black Crackers. So that's my history for today as far as what I'm wearing. Right? So now let's go. You know, always got to start off with these brief announcements. We're going to make it real brief. You got this yet? The Assistant Principal 50. Critical questions for meaningful leadership and professional growth. If you don't have it yet, what are you waiting for? You got to get your hands on this. This goes with the academy. Now, I got to let you in on a secret. The past 2 weeks, I've gone beyond this book. I said I got to go deeper with them. Like I'm giving you information in other books I've written, right? So today I'm going like, really, we getting heavy today. But you got to have this. Next week, I'll be back into this, right? So get this book. It's selling like hotcakes. That's a good thing. But get your hands on it. Amazon.com, ASCD.org, BarnesandNoble.com, PrincipalKafele.com, which will link you to Amazon and ASCD. Get your copy. Everybody's saying they love it. It's great for them. It's a great resource. So let you be a part of that, right? And then talk about it on social media. And don't forget to give me a rating on Amazon. You know, and I want that rating to be like, you know, right? So we'll talk about the other books later. So for those of you who are new to me, you know, we just a little couple of announcements. My 3rd annual School Leadership Institute is coming up July 15 and 16. It's a nominal fee. Go on my website, principalkafele.com, and make sure you register. We're not doing this content. We're doing principal content. That's 2 days, 3 days each virtually, but you got to register for that one. Just a nominal fee, nothing big, just not register. And I want to see your face in the place. Next, subscribe to my YouTube channel, School Leadership Thoughts. Subscribe to it. You got to be a part of it, because I'm always putting new videos up, and I want you to get those videos. So subscribe to that channel. We got 7,600 subscribers. I want to take it up to 10,000 before the summer is out. So subscribe to that channel, School Leadership Thoughts. And now the overarching question to this academy, for those of you who are new to me, the overarching question: does my assistant principalship benefit my students academically? And see, that's the word, the 2 words, benefit and academically. Does my assistant principal leadership benefit my students academically? That I'm not talking about discipline and all that. I mean, are your students getting smarter? Are your students achieving at higher levels because of you and your capacity of assistant principal? That matters. So that's the overarching question to the 18 weeks that we're doing together. So last week I gave you an assignment. I gave you a parting question, and I said to you, y'all on here heavy. I said to you, do the teachers that I supervise perceive that Classroom equity is an inherent component of my overall instructional leadership. I asked you to take that with you and just ponder over it. Do the teachers that I supervise perceive, and that's the word there. The classroom equity is an inherent component of my overall instructional leadership. All right. So that was, I just want you to let that one marinate throughout the course of the week. So here we are. I'm into it. I'm still into this topic. How do the teachers I supervise perceive me as an instructional leader? This is like part 3, part 4. I mean, we just went off with this one, right? So let's set it up. And I'm in it now. You get your notepad, your pen, or some of y'all type right on the screen because you showed me online. So however you do it, I'm in it. I got a lot for you today. So here we go. 2 weeks ago, I asked you this question that kind of set this whole thing off. It said, do I ensure that my staff utilize a variety of instructional strategies that consider the different learning styles, ability levels, social, emotional needs of my students? See, they're yours. In a student-centered, culturally responsive, culturally relevant, and equitable learning environment, right? So then with that, we just took off, right? And then we took off some more. And then last week, I got to this difference between the equality classroom and the equity classroom, the equality mindset teacher and the equity mindset teacher. So here, I'm not going to repeat that because we moving on. I got a lot to cover. But I will, the overview of the questions for those of you who are coming on here and didn't get that last week and you didn't watch the videos during the week. Listen, if you missing these, because I know a lot of people miss them, because I mean, they coming at you, bam, bam, Saturdays come quick, bam, bam. And you like, man, I can't keep up with this dude. That's why I put them on YouTube. So now you got a week, you can watch them on YouTube. I'll upload this one as soon as I finish. So watch the video so that you can always be caught up to date. This is an academy, man. This university. This the University of Principal Kafele, right? So you got to be here. And if you miss it, then you got to watch the video so that you're caught up. So now last week I said, what is an equality mindset? I said, what is an equity mindset? I asked, is equity a priority in my school? I asked, is equity a priority of my leadership? I asked, if so, what is the evidence? Then I asked, what role does my leadership play toward reinforcing a teacher equity mindset? And I followed that with, how am I being perceived by staff as a proponent of equitable practices? Right. So that was equality. We spent a whole like 45 minutes there. Then I went into the potentialities of an equality mindset, and I said student individuality and identity obscurity is almost guaranteed. I said culturally neutral, culturally generic relations with students you can practically bet on. Culturally neutral, culturally generic pedagogy becomes a given. Potential for unconscious, implicit, and or explicit biases to exist is a given in that equality-based classroom. And then I said that culminates into a very unhealthy climate and culture and ongoing behavioral infractions, disciplinary referrals being written. So, and that took me right into the discussion of equity when I ran out of time. That's where I am now. We got 50 minutes. Let's unpack this thing. In fact, let me slow it down a tad. Let me get a sip of water. So here I'm saying to you that that equity mindset classroom versus that equality. When we talk about that equity mindset classroom, we're talking about that classroom where that teacher sees these individuals. There's this individuality that exists because I see that each of you are different. So here you are in your assistant principal leadership role, and you're visiting classrooms, and in an equity classroom, you know before you walk in that there are young people that have different sets of needs because they're not all the same. Young Principal Kafele is a student in your school, and he is not, I repeat, he is not, and I will say it one more time for the trilogy, he is not an auditory learner by any stretch of the imagination. And if he's in a classroom that is lecture based, that is equality based, because a lecture based classroom is pretty much an equality based classroom. So he's in that classroom and he's being subjected to a lecture, and he's not an auditory learner. So now it gives the illusion, it gives the impression that young Principal Kafele doesn't study. Young Principal Kafele doesn't do homework. Young Principal Kafele is detached. Young Principal Kafele has apathy. Young Principal Kafele does not want this. Young Principal Kafele is disinterested, and none of these apply. There's nothing applicable in anything I just said. Young Principal Kafele is simply not an auditory learner. That's it. That is it. That's why I tell you guys, have these notepads ready, right? Because some of you, I know you need to write in order for your brain to process. I purposely don't put PowerPoints up here because, again, this is free, right? And I don't want my clients watching this stuff and they're like, man, we pay you thousands of dollars for what you doing on Saturday morning for free. What's up, Kafele? So I can't run that risk. I can't be putting PowerPoints up here for y'all. And then the client's like, yo, man, we paid you handsomely. And you did the same presentation from your living room, your dining room for free. So I can't give you all that. Right. So that's why I need you to take the notes. So now young Principal Kafele is not an auditory learner, man. He don't learn through the ear. That's not how he learns. He gotta see it. Right. And if he sees it and is given the opportunity of time to process it, then there's a higher probability that he's going to retain it and to comprehend it, to make sense of it, right? And now can apply it to his life, right? So I'm asking you, leader, assistant principal watching me, principal that supervises that assistant principal, assistant superintendent that knows what's happening under your nose, superintendent that knows what's happening under your nose within your district-wide leadership, knowing that assistant principal's in that building, right? Is that assistant principal prepared to go into that classroom to ensure that equitable practices are occurring, or said differently, to teach equity? But see, here's the thing with equity, right? Equity is interesting because, I called myself, not in name, but an equitable practitioner for all the years I taught going back to 1988 up to the present, but there was no language for that. Right. So then here comes this word equity. I guess it was borrowed from the language of home ownership, and it was placed into the classroom. So we said equitable practices. Right. So I said, OK, that's what I've been all this time. But then, so here I'm out on the road doing in-services and professional development, and I'm teaching equity. And then it hits me. I said, wait a minute. Equity is not just what you do, right? I mean, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, wait a minute. Equity is not just what you do. Equity is who you are. Man, somebody out there, you didn't hear me. I said it loud, but you didn't hear me. It went like this. Let me give it to you again. Equity is not just what you do. Equity is who you are. What you mean, Principal Kafele? What you saying? Watch this, y'all. You could be at the equity training, right? And somebody put all them flames up. You got that right, right? Like you could be at that training, right? And you like, oh God, I gotta go to this training today and listen to this dude, man, Principal Kafele. What's his name? Principal Kafele. Principal Kafele. What's this guy's name? Principal who? Kafele. So I got to listen to him. Okay, I saw him on like YouTube. He yelling and carrying on. I gotta listen to this dude, right? So now you sitting in the room and you're like, man, what? He gonna be here from 8 to 4? What? I gotta sit here 8 to 4 listening to this equity mess from him, right? So now the person they sitting like this here, right? They Principal Kafele, Principal Kafele, man, I don't want to hear this dude, man. And they sitting like this here. And like their mind is drifting, right? Because I see them. I see these people, right? Sometimes they go like this here. Look, watch this. So they passing out in the middle of my workshop. So I go near them and I start yelling, right? So that's what I do, y'all. So now watch this, y'all. That person, like here's their mindset. Their mindset is, man, I teach math. I teach science, man. What we talking about? Equity, man. Either they going to get it or they not going to get it, right? That's the mindset. Either they going to get it or they not going to get it, right? That's the mindset of that person. So I'm watching that. What time is it, man? I still got 5 more hours of this guy, man. Jeez. So like as I'm watching that play out in real time, I'm saying, man, I said, look, equity, I could teach this person, I could teach this audience all the equity in the world. I don't usually do shout outs on this thing, but it's a dude on here right now. I would be remiss if I didn't shout him. My man Basil Marin is on here, man. I mean, I don't do shout outs on this. I don't. But when I see my man Basil Marin, I got to shout my man out. That's one of my guys, right? So let me get back. So now when we talk about equity, right? We say he's the person or he or she sitting there like this here, and I'm saying this. I could teach you all the equity I want to. I could, but that doesn't mean you're gonna receive it. That doesn't mean you're gonna embrace it. That doesn't mean you're gonna internalize it. That doesn't mean that. You just got it. You're forced to sit through a presentation, an in-service, a workshop, a seminar, whatever it is. You have to sit there because it's contractually you have no say. And that's why I say equity is not solely what you do. Equity is who you are. Now watch this. I'm gonna go deeper with it. Somebody gonna say ouch on this one. Equity is a reflection of the teacher's humanity toward the students that you service. Woo! Somebody didn't hear me. Let me say that again. Equity is a reflection of the teacher's humanity toward students. Now let's go deeper. Equity is a window to your soul. That's what equity is. See, it's a reflection of your humanity. It's a window to your soul. I mean, we shouldn't have to teach equity. You should walk into like we can teach the skill set required, right? The strategies required in order to balance a classroom. Yes, we teach that, but that's not what I mean here. What I mean here is I shouldn't have to teach you that every youngster has his uniqueness. Every youngster has his or her individuality. Every youngster here has his or her identity. I shouldn't have to teach that. Hey, somebody, look here. I know I'm going in deep today, and I haven't even gotten to my deepest depth, right? Hit that share button. Somebody need to catch these bombs. Hit that retweet. Somebody need to catch these flames. Just tell them to put on some fireproof gloves because I'm throwing some torches this morning because it needs to be said, right? So here, with what I just said, I'm asking the question: who are you walking into that classroom, because if you allow yourself to be a lecturer, if you allow yourself to have an auditory approach, kids can't benefit, children, scholars, youth can't benefit. Said differently, because I just said that euphemistically. Let me say it the way I normally say it. You in there killing kids. That's the way I normally say it. You killing kids because you in there lecturing. You in there assuming that they all learn alike, and then the one that's not learning, that youngster's being penalized. That youngster's getting a phone call home. That youngster may wind up as a behavioral problem and now sent to you for detention, right? And the youngster's brilliant. The youngster's just as brilliant as anybody else in the district. But the youngster doesn't learn with the side of the brain that you keep appealing to, the side of the brain that you keep targeting. That youngster hypothetically needs to see it, needs to feel it, needs to engage in it, needs to be immersed in it. And you using his ear. And that's not going to work with this particular youngster. But I was being specific before. I said it's not going to work with young Principal Kafele, right? I just saw a name on here. Where'd that name go? I hope that pops back up. Yeah. Again, I don't do shout outs on here, but my man Tommy Mabry in the house, man. I got to shout this guy out. That's my dude, man. Tommy Mabry's in here from Mississippi. I didn't even know. I thought he was at this other conference. Appreciate you, sir. Listen, y'all. Listen. Young Principal Kafele. Y'all be getting up. I say y'all be. Work with me, y'all. Y'all get up in the morning, because I could fix that. You guys, you all get up in the morning. I could fix that, right? So you all get up in the morning on a Saturday. Some of you on the West Coast, it's very early. Matter of fact, I got Alaska friends that watch this. It's like it's still dark outside, but they get up and watch this. Well, the same guy they're watching was the one that was not learning when he was much younger. Because they were going through my ear. I don't learn that way. I'm 59. I still don't learn that way. I'll be 60 in 4 months. I'm counting down the days, right? And I still don't learn that way. I gotta be engaged in it. I gotta be immersed in it. So now here's you. Y'all know I got questions, and we got folks out there to develop them charts. Those signs. So I got questions, man. It's like 11:25. I got 14 questions, man. So here we go. Number one, I want to deal with the category of student individuality and identity distinctiveness. In that equity-based classroom, I'm distinguished from everybody else. I'm not one and the same. I'm distinguished from everybody else. My individuality matters. My identity, it matters. So now I'm asking you, assistant principal, here's my question. How does, and you know, I always keep these self-reflectively. First person, how does my leadership ensure student individuality and identity distinctiveness in the classrooms of the teachers that I supervise, right? So I know Kimberly Wilson Daniel is out there, and she makes these elaborate charts, these signs with all my questions. So go to Twitter, Kimberly Wilson Daniel, get those signs she makes. And then you got all the notes, but you got it in a beautiful graphic, right? So she's out there somewhere. I didn't see her name, but I know she's out there, right? So how does my leadership ensure student individuality and identity distinctiveness in the classrooms of the teachers that I supervise? See, if you're trapped in an office doing discipline and then you up in the cafeteria for 3 periods supervising cafeteria, then you can't make those distinctions. So now young youth Principal Kafele sitting up trapped in the classroom, being taught through his ear auditorily, not realizing Principal Kafele is valedictorian material. Young Principal Kafele is Ivy League material, but he doesn't have the benefit of being in a classroom with a teacher that understands how his brain processes information, how his brain make sense out of information. See, Principal Kafele needs that teacher in the class that understands the significance of student individuality and identity distinctiveness. So again, how does my leadership ensure student individuality, identity distinctiveness in the classrooms of the teachers that I supervise? Oh man. And see, that's key. In the classrooms of the teachers that I supervise. Somebody should be saying ouch, because again, if you're not in those classrooms, if you don't live in those classrooms, you can't answer that question. It's impossible. You cannot do it, right? So here, let's couple that question with this one. How does my leadership ensure that every student has a voice in the classrooms of the teachers that I supervise? Oh man, I tweaked that one. How does my leadership ensure that every student has a voice in the classrooms of the teachers that I supervise? So when we use that word voice, used in this context, when one has a voice, one has individuality. One has distinction, right? I have a voice. My presence matters. My presence is obvious. My presence is evident because my teacher has enabled me to have a voice in this space, right? So I'm saying all that under the category of student individuality. So think about that teacher that says, I don't see race, right? Because this teacher exists. I may have said this in a previous video, but I'm saying it now for a different context. I don't see race, this teacher might say. I don't see ethnicity. I don't see color. I don't see these things. I say, teacher, you must see their race. You must see the color of their skin. You must see their ethnicity, because that in large part comprises who they are and where they're from, right? Who their ancestry is, what their heritage is, what are the shoulders upon which they stand, right? What is that richness that's flowing through their veins relative to who they are? So I don't want to suppress that. I want to accentuate it. I want to celebrate it. I want to blow it up. I want to make sure that I'm accentuating and celebrating for that student, but I also want to accentuate and celebrate for the others that may not realize what that student brings to the table. But also I want to make sure that I'm not creating an artificial space in the classroom that is not consistent with what's outside of the classroom, a world that will recognize those differences, right? So I want to recognize that. Like I'm wearing this shirt, as I keep telling you, I wear Negro League shirts for all 18 weeks. The Atlanta Black Crackers. I'm wearing this with pride. This is a part of my personal heritage, right? So I don't want to wear Yankees hat. Jersey. I don't want to wear Mets jersey. I'm in Jersey. So I don't want to wear the New York stuff. I want to wear something that represents a history that's consistent with the history that I wake up to every morning. Do you see the difference? See, that's critical. So now that was student individuality, student and identity distinctiveness. Let me go to the second category: culturally responsive relations with students. Once again, culturally responsive relations with students. I got two questions for that one. Question number one, which is question number three in terms of you guys' notes. Watch that, Corey. How does my leadership ensure culturally responsive relations between the teachers that I supervise and my students? See, I'm talking about your leadership. How does my leadership ensure culturally responsive relations? So if you're absent, if you're missing from that classroom, from that pre-observation conference, from that post-observation conference, if you're missing in action, then you're not in a position to ensure that those culturally responsive relations exist in that classroom that take into consideration the different cultures in that room. You don't have a monolithic classroom. You don't have everybody's the same, cut from the same cookie cutter. They're all different. And even if they're all the same race, ethnicity, guess what? They're all different. So now how does your leadership ensure that teacher is responsive culturally? Coupled with the fourth question, second under this category, what is my understanding of culturally responsive teacher-student relations, right? Once again, what is my understanding of culturally responsive teacher-student relationships. So for example, when I talk about being culturally responsive, I'm saying, teacher, you have to consider the experiential background of that youngster. You got to consider the reality of being that youngster. So let's say, because I want to bring race into this discussion, right? Because a lot of me going like doing all this extra, because this was not part of my 18-week script, what I'm into right now. But because of what has happened, starting with George Floyd and the social unrest / social change that is occurring right now, and it's emanating out of the experience specifically of African Americans. I want to be specific as it relates to African Americans and Latinos, right? So here I'm saying, what is my understanding of cultural responsive relations between teacher and student, right? Or the way I worded it before, understanding of cultural responsive teacher-student relations. Now, so let's look at that black and brown children, right? And now here you are, you've got these two groups, these two in America, minority groups, who have their own experiential background, their own realities, their own challenges, their own obstacles, their own needs, their own interests, their own goals, their own aspirations, right? So that are unique to them individually and also unique to a community. Right? So the experience of being black, for example, what does that mean? The reality of being black, what does that mean? The challenge of being black, what does that mean? The obstacle of being black, or brown, what does that mean? Right? So when we talk about that culturally responsive relation where we're here, I, as the teacher, have to understand that, so that I know how to position myself with that youngster. See, if I don't understand that, then I don't know how to position myself. And that's where you come in, assistant principal. That's where you come in, principal, who's training that assistant principal and training yourself for that matter. That's where you come in, assistant superintendent, who may be working with that principal who is working with that assistant principal. That's where you come in, a superintendent who is working with that assistant superintendent, who is working with that principal, who is working with that assistant principal. See, so it's intertwined, it's interconnected. So it involves all the layers of leadership, right? So those cultural relations. Let's go to culturally relevant pedagogy, right? That's a big one. What is my understanding of culturally relevant pedagogy, right? So we're saying that these are all potentialities as far as the equity mindset classroom. So there's potential for student individuality, identity, distinctiveness, potential for culturally responsive relations with students, potential for culturally relevant pedagogy. So the question becomes, what is my understanding of culturally relevant pedagogy? That's my question, assistant principal. What is your understanding of it? Like what does that mean, right? So I got these sub questions. I got 3 of them. Actually, I got 6 of them. So I got more than 14 questions. I got 20. So here's the first sub question to what is my understanding of culturally relevant pedagogy? Number 1. Who are my students, and will they be able to identify with or see themselves in this lesson? Let me say that again. Who are my students, and will they be able to identify with and see themselves in this lesson? Oh man. So in other words, there's an A and a B to this. That was the A. The B is from the vantage point of the student. The A was you speaking, or the teacher. Now here's the student speaking. Where am I in this lesson? Period. Question mark. Once again, where am I in this lesson? Where's me? See, so we're talking about being culturally relevant. So I'm asking you first, who are my students? Who are they? Are they black? Are they brown? Are they white? What are they? And now, how do I take, based on the racial ethnic composition of my students, how do I take this lifeless document called curriculum, breathe life into it, and make learning relevant for my students? Who are my students, and will they be able to see and identify with themselves within the lesson? Student, where am I in this lesson? Right? Where am I in this lesson? So now let's go. Let's go to the second sub question. Who are my students, and what are the historical implications with this lesson? You could think of any given subject area, and there could be, not always, but there could be historical implications. Well, this question is asking, what might they be given who's in my classroom? Right? See, I can take anything. I can take any science and find the historical implication. I can take any social studies lesson and find the historical implication. I can take any math lesson and certainly any English lesson, any language arts, any literature lesson, and identify the historical implication, because I'm trying to build a bridge. I'm trying to enable the student to see self in the lesson. I want that youngster to see self. But for me, as a social justice educator, I want student to see self historically and even politically, socio-politically, right? I want student to see self in that equation. So now I asked the question, second sub question, who are my students and what are the historical implications with this lesson? So here's what the student is asking. Sub question as it relates to the student now. Who am I? ... in history. Once again, who am I in history? Now, I'll confess to all of you watching this morning and all who will see the tape, the video throughout the week. This would be a lot easier for me to explain and teach if I was using PowerPoint, right? But I told you I can't do it, right? So you got to work with me. So who are my students and what are the historical implications with this lesson? But for them, they're asking the question, the student themselves, who am I in history? Who am I? I went 23 years of my life not knowing who that was in my mirror, historically speaking. Then at the age of 23, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. I read Before the Mayflower. I read From Slavery to Freedom. And I read The Miseducation of the Negro. And I read Introduction to African Civilization. I said that already. I read so many books. No, I didn't say it. I read Introduction to African Civilization. And that introduced me to who that is in my mirror, historically speaking. See? And that's when I started flying. That's when I started soaring. But prior to that, I didn't know. So I was complacent. I didn't want to be complacent. I wanted to do bigger things with my life. But I needed that foundation. You have children sitting in your classrooms who need that foundation. And as that assistant principal of the teachers that you supervise, you have to be in position to provide that foundation. You have to position yourself, and you cannot do it from a main office. You cannot do it from the assistant principal's office. It's not going to happen. And yes, that person that just right, they came before Columbus, is on the list. You guys know I have that extensive book list on my blog page, principalkafelewrites.com, and it is right there by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. It is another unavoidable book. But even that book comes after, in terms of sequence, Before the Mayflower. I want them to understand that first and then go to understanding that African presence in America before Columbus, right? Appreciate you putting that on the screen. So now let's keep moving. So I'm still on the category of culturally relevant pedagogy. So now we say, how does my leadership ensure that culturally relevant pedagogy is provided by the teachers that I supervise? How do I ensure that it is actually happening in the classroom? Now, let me give you this. I got a little example. If I used this earlier in the previous 8 weeks, forgive me, right? It's my go-to example. I use it. I've been using it for 30 years. The lights. I talk about the fact that you and I were introduced to Thomas Edison as the inventor of light bulbs, and I took that and I ran with it for the rest of my life until I turned 23. And just as the person, I don't know what the name was because I missed it. Oh, it was Nakia Garland that mentioned they came before Columbus. Well, the same author wrote Blacks in Science. He edited Blacks in Science because it was a compilation of writers. So I stumbled on that book the same year. And there's a chapter there devoted to a man by the name of Lewis Latimer. And Lewis Latimer was an assistant to Thomas Edison. So when Edison developed this prototype of a light bulb, Lewis Latimer was right there at his side when he did it. So this bulb didn't work. It was a great prototype, but it flickered out. It was very expensive to produce, very expensive, and it was dangerous. It got excessively hot, so it was dangerous. So Lewis Latimer, his assistant, African-American young man, very young man, he saw the imperfections of this prototype light bulb, and he said, "Mr. Edison, I can fix this." To use today's language, he said, "I got this, right? I got this, Mr. Edison." So he said, "What do you think it needs, Mr. Latimer?" He said, "It needs the carbon thread filament, the wiring." He said, "Allow me to put this wiring in that bulb, carbon thread filament. That will sustain its glow. It will take away the intensity of the heat, and it will be it'll be less costly to produce." So he went on and inserted this wiring called carbon thread filament, Lewis Latimer, in 1881. Let me give you a context of when this was. This was just a few years after the Civil War, after the emancipation of the Emancipation Proclamation, right? So now here you are. This man created this. He perfected this bulb. So now all eyes were on him. So what he did, he went on and wrote a textbook on it. The first textbook ever written in America on electrical lighting, written by Lewis Latimer, an African American. I bet you a lot of y'all didn't know that, right? So the first textbook ever written on electrical lighting, written by an African American. So now his name is out there, and there's no social media yet, right? So now they said we're ready to install electrical lighting in the big cities, right? We're ready to transition out of gas lighting because now we got electrical lighting. Got bulbs. So they said, "We would like you to come and supervise the installation because you're the lighting expert." So when lighting was being installed in New York and London and Philadelphia and DC and Montreal, Canada, Lewis Latimer supervised that. Here's my point. I'm being culturally relevant right now. See, if I just sat in the classroom and I just focused on Thomas Edison, and I got these young people of color, but I got white students in the room as well, and I omitted or distorted or marginalized or ignored the students and thereby what I need to teach them, they lose. They lose. I don't want them to lose. So I want to take into consideration who's sitting in that classroom. If there's somebody watching right now or who will watch the video later, and what I just said was something new to you, you got to question that right now in real time. Why am I just hearing this from Principal Kafele? Why have I never heard of Lewis Latimer? Why was I sold this thing about Thomas Edison? This man said Lewis Latimer, he cited the book Blacks in Science by Ivan Van Sertima, Black Inventors of America by McKinley Burt Jr. with patent numbers, right? So you can trace it, just like the telephone. Alexander Graham Bell created it. But without a blueprint, you can't create anything. You can't invent anything without a patent, right? You got to have a patent. But in order to have a patent, you got to have a blueprint. Well, Lewis Latimer was a draftsman, and Alexander Graham Bell was not. So he had to commission the services of Lewis Latimer to draw the blueprints for the first phone. So when you pick up your phone later, you can think about Lewis Latimer. When you look at your lights later, you can think about Lewis Latimer. I'm just being culturally relevant. See, that's what that is. That's not letting everything be. Let me keep it real right now. That's not letting everything in history be white, right? That's looking at other people's contributions, other people's significance, and considering who's in that classroom. I don't care who's in that classroom. You could be suburban, white district, wealth, privilege. Everybody's going to Wall Street. They need that information too. Everybody needs that information. Because if not, then we've all got a distorted view of other people outside of ourselves, right? So again, how does my leadership ensure that culturally relevant pedagogy is provided by the teachers that I supervise? That means you got to have a knowledge base yourself. That means that PD, that professional development, that professional learning for staff has to be on point. It's got to be diverse, right? It's got to be multicultural. It's got to be inclusive. It's got to have that element of social justice education, and it's got to be equitable. It's got to be student-centered, right? It's all these components. That lecture to the ear is not going to cut it. Let's keep moving. Next broad question now. Category, I mean. Teachers' willingness to embrace possible biases, whether they be unconscious, implicit or explicit. So again, I'm under the potentialities of an equity-based classroom. So the fourth potentiality is teachers' willingness to embrace possible biases, whether they be unconscious, implicit, or explicit. So here's what I'm saying here. I got a question. Do I ... How do I go about engaging the teachers that I supervise in the tough conversations on racial biases? That was a big one. Let me read that to you again. Do I ... I say that because of the folks that are writing those, creating those signs. Do I ... How do I go about engaging the teachers that I supervise in the tough conversations on racial biases? Here's what I mean. Hey, assistant principal, this is probably the toughest question of the whole 18 weeks. Do you, let me get closer to my camera here. Do you have the audacity to engage the staff that you supervise in those tough conversations about race, right? Do you have the courage, the spine, the guts, the wherewithal to engage the teacher in that tough conversation about racial biases that you may have detected that the teacher is not cognizant of, or the teacher is very cognizant of and does not care? See, that's, hey, somebody need to hit that share button. Somebody needs to hit that retweet button, because I know I got colleagues somewhere in the world. I'm not going to point no fingers, but I know I got some colleagues. They're not going to ask that question at the seminar. They're not going to deal with that. That's too controversial. We let Kafele deal with that stuff. We ain't dealing with that, right? See, I'm saying to you, as assistant principal, you have to have the audacity to engage your staff in the tough conversation. Anybody could have the light conversation. Anybody could have that conversation. But what about that meat and potatoes conversation? Let me get right up in this camera. What about that tough conversation about race, right? And hey, principal, let me talk, because there's principals out here. Hey, principal, let me talk to you. As they say, let me holler at you. Hey, principal, do you have the willingness to have that conversation with your entire staff? Because if you've got Black and brown children sitting in them classrooms and you're not willing to have that conversation, you're going to call up Principal Kafele, hey, Principal Kafele, come on in my school and have that conversation because you don't want to have it. Then that's just me coming in there for a day, probably making half the staff upset with me, right? And then I leave, and now you haven't dealt with it because you passed it on to me, the consultant. But you got to deal with it. Let me come in and reinforce it. Don't let me come in to introduce it. Let me reinforce it. You introduce it, you sustain it. Let me just be that other voice, right? So I'm saying to you, in terms of that equity-based classroom and the teacher's willingness to address it. See, in that equity classroom, that teacher's open. That teacher says, "Look, I'm ready. If I'm bringing biases to classrooms, right? I want to deal with it." Right. I want to learn about my biases that I may not realize exist because no one's ever confronted me. I want to know about my microaggressions. Right. I want to know about anything implicit that I may be saying in that classroom that I just don't realize. I want to be exposed to I want my expectations to become evident in terms of if my expectations for certain students are here and other students are here because of hidden biases that I have that I don't realize I have. I need a mechanism, a vehicle to bring that out. So in that equitable based school, that equitable based classroom with that equity mindset teacher, that teacher's like, yo, I'm ready. Let's talk about it. I want to correct those deficiencies. Right. I remember when I was in college, because, some of you didn't know my story. I had two stints of college. I had the bad side and the good side. So when I got to that good side, when I was really taking care of business, like when I was getting like an A- and I would go to the dean, to her boss, and challenge the dean to say, look, you better change that A- to a solid A, right? Whereas in the old days, I'll do cartwheels down the street just to get a C. So that was, that was two different phases of my life, right? But see, I remember during those days, some of the professors, they would say, you like they were impressed with the work I was doing and my grade point average, and they would say things like, "Hey, you different." Now I didn't know what that meant. I was too deaf, dumb, and blind, right? So I didn't know what that meant. I had to grow into that. Man, you different, right? So that was like a microaggression. I didn't know that back then. I figured that out much later, right? So they castigating the whole race and saying I'm above it, right? I'm you different, right? You smart, right? So I didn't know how to receive that at that time, right? I figured that out later on, right? So again, do I dot. How do I go about engaging the teachers that I supervise in those tough conversations on racial biases? I'm gonna say this. You can't run away from that discussion. I don't care what the politics are in your district. If you got them youngsters sitting in your classroom and there's the potential for any kind of bias, don't have to be racial, anything, and you don't have the willingness to address it, then I ask you this question rhetorically. Why are you in leadership? Why are you there? Because you're not needed. Leaders are courageous people. Leaders have spine. Leaders are going to take on the tough situations. I'm going to write about a lot of that stuff because I haven't written about any of that in terms of my own personal experience. It's coming. Because I had to have a spine to get through. In order for me to get through my 14 years, I had to have a spine. I had to have audacity, right? I make it look like it was gravy by the way I present myself on video and in person. But y'all got to learn the story. We'll talk about it one day. We'll talk about it. Let me keep going. Second question to teach your willingness to embrace possible biases is identifying, uncovering, and addressing racial bias a part of my leadership? Let me read it to you again. Is identifying, uncovering, addressing racial bias a part of my leadership? Actually, undressing is appropriate, right? Undressing these biases, right? So a part of my leadership. You got to look the mirrors up, somebody. Look within yourself. You scared? You intimidated? You running away? Or you meet it? See, got to meet it. Those young people are depending on you to meet it head on, right? I'm not asking you to be a revolutionary. I'm just asking you to lead your school. That's all. In the capacity of assistant principal, lead your school, so that those children are not in a situation where they're being undermined because of the potential for biases to exist. Now, in terms of what those conversations sound like, that's when you guys invite me to your school, right? So we can have the longer 6-hour conversation during the day. So we can go 7:30 to 3 or 8 to 4, whatever it is, right? That's for that invitation. So just call me, right? Don't call me. Don't call me. Email me. Don't call me. Email me, and I'll be ready. We do it on Zoom, right? Because I ain't getting on the planes right now. Once the virus is gone, once some of y'all out there come off them beaches and put the mask on and stay your behind home, then the virus can leave, and then I can jump on those planes, right? So now let's keep going. Everything we've just said culminates into this: healthy classroom climate and culture. And when I say healthy classroom climate and culture, number one, I'm talking about the climate, the mood of that classroom. What is the mood of that classroom? What do you feel when you walk in, right? And then what is the culture of that classroom? What's the mood and culture of that school? That culture, I can give you the long definition, but I'll sum it up in a word. What is the lifestyle of that school, of that classroom? How are we living in this space, right? So oftentimes when I talk about the climate and the culture of a school and a classroom, I spend a lot of time. In fact, let me be honest with you. I spend 2 hours on these 4 questions I'm gonna give you. Right? We'll call them sub questions under healthy classroom climate and culture. I spend 30 minutes per question, and those of you who've seen me live, you know that to be true. I call these the intentionalities of what students see, hear, feel, and experience in a classroom. Let me give you these quickly. I see what time it is. You hang in there with me for a minute. And I will be on July 4th, by the way. Look, the learning don't stop. The teaching doesn't stop. I'll be here July 4th in person on this computer for the full hour, July 4th. If everybody's out there having a barbecue and there's no one on here but me, I will talk to myself. But I will be here July 4th for an hour, right? So now, with that said, these 4 intentionalities, I'm going to wrap it up real quick, y'all. Hang in there with me. What do my students see when they walk into my space? I'm going to use a lot of this next week because I see that I need, like I told you, I do 2 hours and it's almost 12 o'clock. So I'm going to just give you the sense. What do they see? What do my students hear? What do my students feel? What do they feel emotionally in my space? And what do my students experience? The big picture. See, let me give those to you again. What do they see? Like everything in that classroom that the eyes can see. What do they see? And what is the intentionality behind it? And as you discuss this with the teacher relative to your assistant principal capacity, how are you being perceived? Because that was the whole thrust of this session by the persons that you evaluate. So once again, what do you when the students walk into the classroom, what do they see? I'll talk about specific examples of what I mean by that next week. What do they hear? What do they hear? Here's a big one. What do they feel emotionally in your classroom? What do I feel? Do I feel good? Do I feel special? Do I feel whole? Do I feel like I'm somebody valued in this classroom? And in big picture, what do they experience? Is it magical? Is it memorable? I will break these 4 questions down next week, right? So you know that's part of the agenda. Let me finish up. I said that student individuality and this identity distinctiveness. I said that culturally responsive relations, culturally relevant pedagogy, and teachers' willingness to embrace possible biases culminate into a much healthier classroom climate and culture, number 1. But secondly, reduction, this is the last category, reduction in behavioral infractions and disciplinary referrals. So here's my question. This is going to have to spill into next week as well. I got these 2 questions, which they deserve a whole session in and of themselves, and you'll know that by when you hear them. Here's the first one. Question number 13. Does disproportionality in disciplinary referrals, detentions, and suspensions exist under my leadership? Oh man, y'all ain't hear me. You did not hear me. Let me get that to you again. Does disproportionality in disciplinary referrals, detentions, and suspensions exist under my leadership? Because if it does, assistant principal, if it does, principal, you have work to do. How you going to take a certain segment of students? Like let's take, because the national data says Black students are suspended and detained and more than any other group of students in America. That's the data. That's not my opinion. The data says Black students are disproportionately disciplined beginning in preschool all the way up to high school. That's what the data says. So I'm asking you, hey, assistant principal, are you a part of that data? That's what I'm asking you. Does disproportionality exist? Because let the numbers speak for themselves. Just let the data talk. You don't have to talk. Does disproportionality exist under your leadership in terms of detention, suspension, expulsion, or just the referral itself? And then the follow-up question to that, which would be question number 14, in what ways is my leadership eliminating disproportionality in disciplinary referrals, detention, and suspension? Let me read it again. In what ways is my leadership eliminating disproportionality in disciplinary referrals, detention, and suspension. So next week I'll have an agenda, but this last section, healthy classroom climate and culture and reduction in behavioral infractions to disciplinary referrals, that will be a part of the discussion because I asked the question, but I want to answer the question, right? So let me give you this parting question. Don't leave me yet. Y'all hanging there for a minute. Parting question. I always give you an assignment. I want you to take this question and let it marinate for the whole week. Question is, how intentional am I about ensuring that the teachers that I supervise have made equitable practices an inherent component of their students' experiences in their classrooms? I'll read it again because it was long. How intentional am I about ensuring that the teachers that I supervise have made equitable practices an inherent component of their students' experience in their classrooms, right? So I told you what next week will be. I told you I will be here July 4th. By the time I have seen you, I will have read a portion of Frederick Douglass' speech, What is the 4th of July to the Slave? Because that is something I do ritually every 4th of July. I sit outside on my steps and I read a portion of that speech to give the 4th of July relevance in terms of what it is historically to a Black man, right? So I encourage you to go online and find Frederick Douglass' speech about the 4th of July and read some of it. It's a long speech, and it's not the easiest speech because of Frederick Douglass' vocabulary, which is extensive. He probably knew every word in the dictionary, and he used all those words. So it's not the easiest speech to read because there are words there that are very difficult unless you have a thesaurus to read. So imagine an ex-slave with that kind of vocabulary, right? So again, my 3rd annual school leadership conference. I want to see you there. So go on my page, like right after I get off of here, and principalkafele.com and scroll down and find it and register. It's a nominal cost. It's nothing, a drop in the bucket. And then it's 3 hours on July 15, 3 hours on July 16, virtually. And we're talking principal leadership. One more time, the assistant principal 50, get your hands on it. It's red hot, man. I can't even keep it in one hand too long. It's red hot, it's blazing. Everybody seemed to be buying it, but I'm still going to push it. Get your hands on it before that second printing runs out. And then while you're at it, get its companion. This is its companion, the aspiring principal 50. If you're an assistant principal, this is for you. If you're an aspiring principal, I wrote this for you. If you are a new principal, you in your first, say, 3 years, I wrote this for you. So that's the companion, but then go with the trilogy, the principal 50. I wrote this for the principal, but I also wrote it for the one that wants to be in that seat. You need to read this and start thinking as a principal now. And then lastly, here's the final of all my administrative books. Is my school a better school because I lead it? Once again, is my school a better school because I lead it? Get off for Amazon.com, ASCD.org, BarnesandNoble.com, PrincipalKafele.com will link you to Amazon and ASCD. So I'm done. Listen here, I always end it this way. I don't have my regular mask in front of me, but I got this here. Put this on, y'all, when you go outside. Just put it on, right? I know you look ridiculous, you know. I know it. Just put the thing on so that we can get rid of this virus. Stay 6 feet away from people. I know you're glad to see them, but just say hi from a distance, right? So just make sure you're doing just living all the CDC guidelines, and then take care of yourself. Get the diet, get your diet right. Do the exercise. Engage. Do all make the right decision when you're in the supermarket buying and you see that big bag of chips staring at you. Just walk past it. Just like Dionne Warwick said. She said, "Walk on by." Walk on by. Just walk on by, right? You don't have to buy that, right? So buy the things that are healthy. Keep yourself healthy. Get outside and do your mile, do your 2 miles, do your 3 miles. You don't have to run. You don't have to impress anybody. Walk. Just walk, right? Just get it in, because if you don't take care of you, then you're not there for your students, right? So take care of you. Look here, y'all. I'm done. I want you guys to have a great week. An extraordinary week. Have your best week yet. Peace. Peace. I know I went backwards. Thumbs up. And then we cock the fist back. Do this with me, y'all, because that bam is important. Count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Bam. I'll be uploading this on the YouTube. In fact, it's on YouTube Live. It should be there now. I see you on July 4th with some fireworks next week. Thanks for tuning in.